Do you struggle to line up schedules with players for D&D? If so, then keep watching. We've got a great episode that makes it easy to set out an adventure at any time that is convenient for you.
Yeah, good luck with that one.
Hello and welcome, heroes, to the Crit Academy. I am your host, Justin.
I'm your co-host, Ian.
I'm your co-host, Brandon.
We hope to inspire you with creative content that they can bring with you on your next adventure.
Our show may not be suitable for young children, but neither is our D&D game. That's totally not been in there for like a year.
About to say.
We want to thank you guys for joining us here today at Crit Academy Studios, where everything's made up and your roles don't matter.
Yeah, that's right. Your roles are like trying to schedule a D&D game with friends.
Try scheduling a game with law school students who all have different schedules.
Oh, man, that's savage and hard as hell.
You available on Saturday? I object!
I am super excited today, guys, and hopefully you are. We got a really great topic today. I've really been interested in West March's games for a while. I've been wanting to cover it for some time now, and so I'm happy to finally really delve into it and give it a go. So why don't we start off with the basic question that everyone's asking. Brandon, what is a West March's Dungeons & Dragons game?
I have no idea. That's why I'm here.
Son of a bitch.
It was designed to be pretty much the diametric opposite of the normal weekly game. That's what the show note says.
Yeah, there's no real regular time. Every session was scheduled by the players on the fly, and I think that that's really important. Because there's no regular party, each game had a different players drawn from a pool of players, which I think is interesting because that's not something that normally you can generally do, but with the pandemic and all that stuff that happened, we are now playing D&D online more than we ever have in the past.
Oh, yep.
I mean, that's and because of that, it gives us new opportunities, specifically for something like a West Marches style game. Though I've seen it most common used as like a play-by-post thing too.
Yep.
There's one other thing that really sets it apart.
Yeah, there was no regular plot. The players decided where to go and what to do, and if you're a DM, that sounds like a nightmare, I know.
Especially if you use Foundry and use maps all the time.
Yes.
It was a sandbox game in the sense that's now used to describe video games like Grand Theft Auto minus the missions.
Yeah.
I guess that could be like
Minecraft go do whatever you want, right?
The Skyrim is that way as well. There was no mysterious old man sending them on quests, no overarching plot, just an overarching environment.
Oh, that's great.
I think the one way they'll work in that virtual tabletop is do what Dragon Age 2 did, and only use 6 maps over and over again.
Oh my god, that's horrible.
It's true.
Which Dragon Age was that?
The second one.
Oh, I didn't play the second one. That's why I was like, first one seemed really good.
It was made like within like that first year or two of the first games because EA rushed them.
Yeah, they do that. They do that a lot.
Anyway, the first game is set in the frontier region on the edge of civilization, the West Marches, as it's known in Faerun. There's a convenient fortified town that is marked the first outpost of civilization and law, but beyond that is sketchy wilderness. All the PCs are would-be known adventurers based in this town. And adventuring is not a common or safe profession. No, not at all. All the PCs are So all the player characters are the only ones interested in risking their lives in the wilderness in the hopes of making a fortune. And NPC adventurers are few and far between. Between sorties into the wilds, the PCs rest up, trade info, and plan their next foray in the tavern or inn.
Now, if you're interested in following along and you want to know more about this, I just sent a link. You can head on over to critacademy.com/blog post. Our episode is based off of Ars Ludi's The Grand Experiment article. I cannot recommend this article enough. Not only does it has hyperlinks within hyperlinks to guide you in the way that they've the way the West Marches game runs. What I think is really cool and what really separates it apart. We recently had an episode about hex crawls, right?
Yep.
And in the hex crawls, we talked about all the different types of hexes representing different variety of regions, right? And for the West Marches style, it's all unexplored, so it's easy to make a variety of different regions that really stand out. Whether it's a set of marshes containing black dragons, or Cradlewood, or Pike Hollow, or some of these areas that are unique in the sense that there's some feature about them that's different, whether it's high mesas, swamplands, a mountain, a path into the Underdark, something like that. And each one has a different ecology and hazard, and that's really what makes the West Marches stuff so interesting, because while you all generally start from the same location, as you go out to square or on your adventure, you're kind of some of the first adventurers that really get to experience that stuff. Now, what's really cool is the PCs at this point get to really explore where they want. We always talk about player agency and how important it is in Dungeons and Dragons. Well, West Marches is literally something that's set up by the players. So when you have a pool of players, they'll say, hey, anybody interested in doing a dungeon crawl through some marshes? The last group that was in the West Marches discovered this dungeon in the Swamp of Sorrows or whatever. But when they went in there, one of them died due to an ambush by a monster. So it might be, out of their level. That's something I'm interested in investigating more, or dying in the process. And I think that really makes it more player focused than most. What do you think about that?
I think a swamp called the Swamp of Sorrows would throw up a red flag or two.
I totally that came to my head from World of Warcraft. But yeah, there are, no adventures in the civilized lands, which I think is interesting. Basically, everybody is heading west, and that's it, which is thus West Marches. Everything else behind you has already been explored.
The battleground deer.
And that makes it all the more interesting, because it really puts the player characters at the forefront of what's going on. Now, I'm sure Brandon can tell us a little bit about how dangerous it is, because this is something that also separates regular games. Because you have a big pool of players, you can make the environment a little more dangerous, can't you?
Yeah, the environment is dangerous. Very dangerous. That's intentional. Because as the great Mud Nexus teaches us, danger unites.
It's true.
PCs have to work together, or they are going to be creamed by whatever's out there. They also have to think and pick their battles. Since they can go anywhere, there is nothing stopping them from strolling into areas that will wipe them out.
And anybody that's played the Elemental Evil campaign setting, it can speak to just how dangerous being able to go anywhere you want is. I think Ian can talk on that a little bit.
A little bit. Yeah. The players learn to observe their environment and adapt. When they find an owlbear tracks in the woods, they give the area a wide berth. At least until they gain a few levels. When they stumble into the lair of a terrifying hydra, they retreat and round up a posse to hunt it down. Now, overall, especially when you're first starting out, the PCs are pretty weak, but essential. They are a small fish in a dangerous world they have to explore with caution. But because they are the only adventurers, they never play second fiddle. Overshadowed by looming peaks and foreboding forests. Yes, but overshadowed by other characters, not so much.
And I think this is really cool, because we talk about how open sandboxy it is, right? So what that means is that everything that's discovered is being discovered by the player characters. And so in this dangerous world, you might find out that, okay, they're in the Swamp of Sorrows is this deadly T-Rex or something, right? So because of that, only somebody who's ready to hunt something like that is probably willing to delve into that area to find out what treasures, lie beyond. And because of that, though, there can be misinformation.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're relying on the characters to gather information. This is where the one thing that I've noticed about West March that I think is the coolest is that knowledge checks, the people following you ain't gonna know how well you did on that knowledge check. So if you identify a owlbear tracks in that area and you report that back but never actually find it, and they rolled like a 3, the players are going to know that. The following players in the group are not going to know that. So they're like, oh, there's an owlbear in there. And they go hunting for said owlbear. Turns out it's a T-Rex, and now they're dead because somebody else rolled a low check, and the map and details are inaccurate.
Yeah.
That ain't no owlbear. I farted and it came with a prize.
So to me, that's something that is really interesting because it takes it in a way that the players, as they collect these notes and these details of where they're going, you're basing their knowledge off of their characters' roles and experiences, which means most things may or may not be what they say they are. And that's something that doesn't generally happen with a team of the same group, right?
Nope.
Because if, you know, Ian and Brandon are in a group with me and they both roll survival checks to identify tracks.
We are so screwed.
Right. They identify tracks that say, okay, this is a CR, or you know that this is an owlbear tracks. They both know, well, Justin's full of shit because I rolled a 3. There's no way that's right. But once again, the people following him aren't going to really know that. And that to me is just intriguing. Now, as we touched on, each of these sessions are self-contained, right? So there's kind of a lot that goes with that. Brandon, do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Every session can be entirely self-contained.
I just said that.
Exactly. The new session will always represent a completely new foray out from the base into the wilderness, even if, coincidentally, the party is exactly the same as last time and want to resume a similar pursuit.
Yeah, the player characters don't have to spontaneously appear in the narrative in an unsatisfying way because everyone basically starts at the same location. And in later adventures, oftentimes you end up finding the travel is hand wave or skipped over, which I think ties really well back into our hex crawl, where you can use the hex crawl for that. So maybe you went into a square in your adventure, right? And you've delved really into it. Now every time you go through that, maybe you just make a roll to see if you encounter something. And then once you do that encounter, you get through that and move on. So the game goes a little quicker in that sense, the more squares you explore. And I think the Chult adventure, really, the Tomb of Annihilation Chult adventures kind of captures that pretty well too. Ian, do you have anything to add, you want to add to that?
Well, also as we firmly established already, this is basically a sandbox style of play. But the players must decide what they would like to do in advance of the session. Now, normally as part of booking the DM's time for the session, the players would also state what they want to do in that session. That way the DM can prep in advance, as we kind of established.
Oh, good.
That would be helpful, especially when you're using maps, without needing to prepare the whole world or improvise large pieces of content. And outside of those first 3 points, one thing that's quite important is session reports are always shared.
Yes, and once again, I've kind of touched on that a little bit. That's what makes this more interesting because, once again, it's players sharing notes with other people. So the better or the worse the notes, it's going to impact the knowledge that the other people have, especially when they pass through an area and discover a giant monolith. Now, one group may not have any interest in that. Oh, just so you know, off in the distance, you see this giant black, obsidian obelisk or whatever. And they may not choose it, so they may write a note, found an obelisk at, this coordinates near just west of, the Swamp of Sorrows. So other players that like lore and stuff might say, hey, I'm interested in a lore venture. The last group, one of these other groups found this obelisk off on the west end of the Swamp of Sorrows. Does anybody want to form a group? So once again, you plop a time. Here's a day I would like to do it. And with a pool of 10 plus people, it's easy to get the group together and charge in, even if it's a different group, because this whole area, this whole town is representative of a city of adventurers that are basically looking to go on this foray. And then once again, I think the introduction of lots and lots of online play has made this even easier, which is just fantastic in my opinion. I don't know what you guys think.
I like the idea of... Fuck you.
I didn't say nothing.
No, I like the idea of...
Did you have to?
The players saying, hey, this is what we want to do, and then saying that to their DM.
Mm-hmm.
That gives the DMs like, okay, so this is exactly what they want. This is what I'm going to give to them. Instead of it being the other way around, saying, hey, I got a game for you guys. This is what we're going to do. And so one of the other players might be, I don't really want to do that.
So
but
then they won't. You grab somebody else.
Is that what the pool of players is supposed to be about?
Yeah, that's the point, right? Is when you're trying to get a game together, the people that end up in the group are the ones that want that type of adventure. Now, unless somebody's desperate, it's like, I need D&D. I don't care if it's lore and no combat. I need D, you know, and you might get those people, and that's okay. Yeah. It's meant for one-offs, which is great. Yeah, got something good for you. But what also touches on this is the fact that the map is blank in most cases, with the exception of a few keynote areas. Now, the Dungeon Master can probably design what these are in advance. Say, okay, you guys have got to the frontier. This little fort area is kind of the hangout for the adventurers. Here's the 5 spots that have been discovered. Nobody's come back from the Swamp of Sorrows yet, so you might want to stay away from there for a little while. There's been some digging into the, near this big giant obelisk that is leading into a dungeon that is still being explored. They've made it 3, floors down, and then they start to run into some trouble, specifically with, they say a giant eyeballed creature with tentacles, that screams telling them to get out or some bullshit like that. And so now you kind of start with most of it blank, though. And so those areas leading up to those moments are undiscovered, and thus the map gets filled out as the group adventures out into the world, which, once again, is a very interesting way to do it, because now you've got, 10 to 20 different players that are all working collaboratively to flesh out this world. And because it's empty and the DMs are setting it up, every DM that does it slightly different is adding a little bit to the story. Every game is adding a little bit to the lore, a little bit to the world building. And the world is being fleshed out by not just the Dungeon Masters, a variety of Dungeon Masters and dozens of players.
So does this work in such a way where, like, one week the table has 6 players and they're exploring this area over here, but then the next week it's going to be 4 or 5 different players who might want to go this way?
Yes.
And so that's okay. That sounds a lot of fun.
And it really is, because what happens is you get players chasing the things they want. So if you decide you want to investigate that obelisk because it might contain lore, you then raise your hand to everyone and say, hey, I'm available on a Saturday between these times. I'm looking to run a game. I want to see this obelisk. I think it might be pertinent to some ancient gods or something. So you're basically telling the group exactly what you're interested in. And those people that are interested in the same thing are the ones that are going to tug and pull. So not only are you getting a game that's focused on a particular location, but you're getting a game that the people that join are interested in that particular thing. And that means like-minded people get together and form groups, which honestly I think is easier for the Dungeon Master, because they don't have to say, okay, this guy loves combat, this guy loves lore, this guy loves role-playing, and tackling them all in one game can be daunting in some cases, because you have to develop all this different stuff. But if I know they all want to go to the 3rd level of this dungeon, I know it's a dungeon crawl, and maybe I'll toss in, a couple lines of roleplay with the Beholder or something. But for the most part, they're there to crawl. And so they build out this kind of story around this area. And the deeper it goes, the DM and the players are creating that content. So they share that content, but it's third party, so what they hear may not be actually accurate, And I think that just makes for a lot of fun. But the big takeaway for West Marches is the fact that it's so versatile for getting a game at a time that's convenient for you. And so my hope is that I want to work towards something with this. I know I run a monthly game with our patrons and stuff, but this is something I want to delve into a little bit, because I'd like to get more patrons involved in the games. So if this is a way I can do that, at least experiment for a little while, I think it would be a lot of fun as well.
Yeah, it sounds like it'd be fun.
Yeah.
How far west can you go?
Till you fall off the planet, I'd imagine. I don't know. That's the beauty of it. You don't know. It goes as far as you want.
Forever.
And that's as far as people are willing. You might come to an end where it's water. Well, guess what? Who's ready for a naval style game, nautical adventures? We just ran into a new ocean.
Just keep going west.
Yeah, and you go west and it's just a short river. You thought it was this big old ocean. It's like, oh, we reached the other end. That was kind of anticlimactic.
You're doing this for like 9-10 years, and it's like, oh, we gotta get across this water, and you get across, and you end up in like water deep. Like, oh shit, did we sail around the planet?
You might. That's interesting.
Okay, we came to the edge of the planet. I see 4 elephants on the back of a turtle.
That's funny. So we keep talking about, you know, having a campaign setting that is, you know, based on unexplored stuff. So this is really great if you want to run a homebrew game, but you don't have everything built out. You can start it in one, you know, little corner of it and then venture out from there. A really great example of this, I don't know if you guys remember, we covered, I worked with Loresmith, and we developed a thing called Savage Dawn. And in Savage Dawn, you're on like one of the last like cities, right? You believe you're in this last like city of this, you know, ancient fantasy adventure. And so when you run it, everything is pretty much undiscovered. Think Attack on Titan, right? Everyone thinks the city is like the last, right? You got the 3 big walls. This is similar to that, and every venture out could be a different discovery. I'll go ahead and include a link to, if you're interested in checking it out. It is free to pick up, thanks to Loresmith.
Did you lose a whole nother fucking city? A whole day from here?
Nobody ever went that direction. But see, that's what's interesting about it. Maybe you can introduce new races that way. You know, you could put a new race in a single square, and that's their little tiny village or something, and they'll only find out that they exist if they wander into the general area and stumble across them, which may be good or bad. If they're anything like Pocahontas, is probably not going to go very well. But I don't know. This is just something that really drives me home, because it drives competition too, right? You're the first to discover something. There's rumors, you guys, there's rumors that someone said that to the northeast, several days travel from the Black Obelisk, that they saw a dragon building its nest and dumping its hoard.
Yeah, have fun with that.
Yeah, right. But you know what I mean? Now people are gonna want to race to that, because once you get it, this is where it sets apart. It's one world. Once it's gone, it's gone. Oh. So if you go and delve into said dungeon and clear it, and anybody that follows you, only thing that's gonna be left is the corpses of those that died in the adventure. You know, and that to me is interesting.
Hey, look, we found Steve. I hated Steve. Oh, sweet, his sword's still here.
That's funny.
Yeah, you could totally do that. You have a character drop that was not part of another group, and let's say they have a magic sword on them, and they're gone, and their group's like, we gotta get out of here, and they take off and leave. Then you have a different group coming up, and you have his body right where it was, and it's like, yo, you stumble across this body and it has a magic sword. Do you want it? Like, oh yeah, you pick it up and you run into the other players. It's like, that's a friend sword!
Or, better yet, he's died full of pins, and then the person goes and grabs it, and now they get shot up full of pins. Poison needles, you know, a trap. If you never want to make the most out of traps, put adventurer corpses in them.
This guy's body is full of darts. Do I really want to do this?
So that's a really good point, because when there are wipes, that stuff is left there for the next group.
Yep.
Which is just phenomenal, especially if you go part another group. Hey guys, I know this area that's got loads of loot. One of my characters died there once. So let's go, you know? But once again, by the time you get there, you may not know if somebody else looted it, I think, which is nice, depending on the details of the...
Only the DM knows.
Right, well, depending on the details that were written or left behind. Well, usually you'll get, we wiped when we went into the 3rd level of this dungeon, and a beholder, you know, devastated rayed us or whatever. What is it, ray of just decimation or disintegration? Yeah. Something like that. Clearly, I don't remember shit. What are you doing?
They commented ghosts. So.
Ooh, the haunt's coming up too. I'm excited. Anyways, and what's really cool is basically you also do the content is kind of tiered, right? The farther out you go, the more likely you are to run into dangers, which is nice. So all the lobby areas are close, which have already most likely been looted by some of the bigger people if it's a well-defined location. but maybe that's where you're going, just to grab, specific crafting materials for the monster that's set in the location, which is really cool too. When it comes down to it, though, there's only a few rules that are really consistent. Ian, would you like to tell us what the really first only hard scheduling rules are?
Well, first and foremost, especially since it's done on short notice, the GM has to be available that day. Well, obviously.
Right.
So the system only works if the GM is pretty flexible.
Okay. Brandon, what's rule 2?
The players have to tell the GM where they plan on going well in advance. So he, meaning me,
or you, or him,
or him,
Yep.
or you if you're a dungeon master,
one of those people,
has at least a chance to prepare anything that's missing.
Okay.
As the campaign goes on, this becomes less and less of a problem because so many areas are so fleshed out by the players, and not much has to go further into it.
What's interesting, the more I think about this, as the area is fleshed out, the monsters and stuff are determined for you, which means you technically have significantly less prep. If somebody delves into the obelisk's dungeon below it and already says, okay, I fleshed it out, it is infested with kobolds and some other monster,
that area is always going to have those.
It's going to already have those. And then you might toss in 1 or 2 bigger monsters that might show up, which then just creates kind of a chain effect of what to expect in this crawl, which is really cool. But when it comes down to it, all other decisions are really up to the players. They fight it out among themselves, sometimes quite literally. And what's interesting to me, though, is I feel like you can tie what the players want into small little quest hooks outside of what is planned. For instance, we talked about player parties dying, right? What if somebody escapes and he knows that there's something there of value and doesn't necessarily tell the group? He just says, hey, I'm interested in delving into this. There's, I've heard that this such and such is there,
greedy bastard.
But doesn't tell them about the said other thing that's there. Great for the rogues, I think, and the really sketchy criminal styles. But what it really comes down to is having a large pool of players and dungeon masters to pull from to easily schedule a D&D game.
Yep.
And that's something that is easier now than it had been in the past. Overall, what are your guys' thoughts on this West Marches style game type?
You're going to need a lot of random tables at your disposal if you're a DM.
That certainly helps.
This sounds fun. I've never had the idea of doing this before. But it's a sandbox idea. That's the thing that I like the most.
Yep.
Yeah, me too. So one thing I would like to add to this probably before we start to move on, and I'll let Ian, looks like he's got something to say too, is that you need a good way to organize this. And I think we've got some pretty potent tools. Creating a Discord channel, creating a Facebook group, a forum, if you still use those, Reddit. And I'm sure there's already groups out there for them.
Google Docs.
Google Docs is really good too. But if you can, type in West March games, I'm sure you can find something across, Reddit and Facebook and whatever other crazy social media apps you may use. TikTok. I bet you could do a TikTok one that's solely dedicated to finding players.
In hex number #25E74. We found this.
Our adventurer stumbled across a sleeping Tarask. Stay way away from this area.
The players in this hex. We have found the ruins of doom. Do not enter. All who has entered here has not come back alive. Well, then how do you know it's called the ruins of doom? Shut up!
No survivors. No survivors, huh? Then I wonder where the stories come from.
Well,
it's like when the Vikings named the Iceland, so people didn't go there.
It's nothing but ice. You wouldn't like it. Go. Just bypass it. Other than that, this is a really cool game type. It's something different. I think right now it's better now than ever to be able to do this and get into a game and charge ahead. I'm really interested with all the free material you can use to make maps and track them and stuff. This just seems like a fantastic way to play a bunch of one-shots that are loosely connected in a story and setting. But the thing that I love the most is that the world is being fleshed out by different people. And that includes stories that are being told from the perspective of the players to other people, which once again passes down that idea of potential misinformation, which honestly, that's the part that interests me the most, aside from getting into a game.
It's a choose-your-own-adventure book with a whiteout marker.
Hey, yeah, you guys know about the big black obelisk? It's not there no more. What happened? Fireball.
Steve.
Bastard. All right, with that, I think that'll close out our main topic today, running West Marches.